Hello my loves, I'm Ellie Frost. Thank you so much for being on my channel where we are talking about the multi-dimensional approach to rapidly and radically healing and transforming during and after narcissistic abuse. And on this channel, this is for people who are ready to drop this bullshit like it's hot. You know the work starts with you, but it doesn't have to take a long time. My method does not take years and years in therapy. It takes being willing, right, to be where you are, accept where you are, and do the energetic work to take your power back, your energy back, and become a sovereign source to self of love, approval, validation, and support, so that you can go on out in the world and create true connection, true love, true joy, true fulfillment, and be your authentic self. Because all narcissistic abuse at its core is an erosion of you and yourself and your soul. It disconnects you from your authentic power, from who you are, right? And when we're disconnected from who we are at core, guess what? We're no longer an energetic match in the universe to our true wants, desires, and dreams. So it blocks your purpose, it blocks your prosperity, your wealth, your fulfillment of life on all levels. So just going no contact with a narcissist but not learning how to be sovereign doesn't break the chain. We tend to attract unhealthy other people, feel very disheartened. I've been there time and time again, very disconnected, very disappointed in life, right? And we then, what's the worst thing? We settle. We settle for fake love instead of love. We settle for a life that we know we're not meant to be living, that is not what we came to experience, right? Because we don't believe anymore that we can have anything better. And I'm here to tell you, and I'm going to share my journey all the way along to prove to you, no matter how hard it's been or what you've been through, you get to have what is your heart is calling you for, right? And it doesn't mean you've got to make decisions right now. It means you've got to dedicate to understanding yourself, being self-focused, which means that we have a relationship with ourselves, right? Self-love is a side effect of what I teach people, because when you are not willing, right, to not exist in relationships, when you are no longer willing to not matter, your whole life changes. Because no matter what, you go to bed at night knowing you didn't betray yourself. And for most of us, we've been trained into self-betrayal, even through things like people pleasing, which manipulators especially make sound good. We're trained to say, well, I'm just a nice person. I'm a people pleaser. People pleasing is a good intention, right? It's got a good intention. You're doing it to get people to like you, to try and fit in, you know, to try and keep the peace, whatever reason. It's still a form of manipulation, because guess what? You're abandoning yourself. And honestly, people don't trust people. This video is about learning, right, to trust people out of narcissistic abuse. But the first thing you've got to be is a safe person and a trustworthy person. I am a safe person for people because I am who I am. Yeah? There's safety in that. I'm not perfect. Some of my things I say are controversial. I don't need you to adopt everything I believe, right? But hopefully I'm a testament of someone who can take you on a journey, who's choosing this stuff every day. And sometimes it gets hard for me too, because I want to take it to another level. I want to build a community where we are absolutely beautifully connected, in love with ourselves, in love with life, in love with each other. We're not isolated and survivors of this. We are people who are causing a ripple effect on the planet, where we get to be safe, trustworthy people. So the first thing I'm going to teach you in this video is you've got to be a safe and trustworthy person to yourself, not self-abandon, in order, right, to be a safe, trustworthy person for others. The one thing I'm proud of in my life is the people I've worked with, because generally, I have a good experience with everyone I've worked with, and that's because I'm a safe, trustworthy person in my work and what I stand for and what I do, right? No matter what people have tried to do to me to destroy me, that remains true. That I can lead from, that I can show you how to do, and that will bring your people to you over time. It will. So first of all, do not self-abandon. Do a check this week. Where am I abandoning myself? Where am I saying yes when I need to say no? Where am I people pleasing? Where is this energy, this person who's around me, pushing me back into a submission? A lot of us go into old patterns and programs and childhood memories of submission, really, to others, because we've been trained, right? Especially in narcissistic abuse. Just take inventory. Now, many of us think, oh my gosh, when I look at this stuff, I never speak up. I constantly people please. I've got no friends around me where I really feel supported. I'm always the one supporting them, and we're overgivers and we generally have this. So we think it takes such a long time to change us. And I'm here to tell you it doesn't. It takes a decision, right? And some things are going to change. Sometimes when we change from the inside out, there's a little bit of friction in relationships because people aren't used to the version of you that's not a slave, that's not a puppet. Right? And you might have a few puppet masters around you that will just have to go. But don't worry, because you're making space for the people who will support you and are also self-sufficient and are also self-sourcing and want to play with you in a different way, right? So there's no other way around it than to allow the people that need to fall away out of your life to go, or sometimes tell them to go, and make space, right? When you come into yourself, there's more space for the right people. Toxic people, narcissists, take up all the space. Why? Because we might have a 10-15 minute interaction with them, which doesn't sound a lot, but what they do to your mind, to your energy field, can go on for weeks, days, months, years sometimes. The after effect of this toxicity lasts a long time, which is why it's not just the conversation. I've thought that so many times. I'll just put up with it. Yeah? I get on the phone with that person. I know they drain the shit out of me, but like every time I feel worse, every time my vibration goes down, every time I just feel worse about my life. But let me just please them and try and be a nice person. And it's nice to have a friend. These friends aren't worth having, right? We've just got the self-work to do. You're better off by yourself than you are allowing people to bring you down. And until you're strong enough to be a sovereign source, especially if you've been through some recent trauma or you're still living in trauma, then it's not about isolating from the world because we want connection, but it's being strong enough to give yourself the space as well to know that you're cultivating healthy relationships. And when things are too intense and you're being drained, you're going to come back home, right? And then you're going to go out again and you're going to see what's there and you're going to see what you're attracting. And if it's not quite what you want, you're going to go again, right? And it will work out. So the first thing is you must be a safe and trustworthy person. That does not just mean I keep my word to other people. It means I keep my word to myself. My word is meaningful. When I say I'm not going here again, I'm not going here again. When I say I'm going to look after myself, I'm going to look after myself. I keep my word to myself and I do not beat myself up when I mess up. Okay, big thing for us. So we've got to be safe and we've got to be trustworthy to ourselves first, to be an energetic match to safe, trustworthy people. Number 2, no one, not even a parent, not even a spouse, not even a partner, we've been trained this way, but it's not actually healthy, gets to automatically have your trust. People have to earn your trust. Now, that does not mean you have to make tests and make their life hard, because that's manipulative. We're not talking about testing people in a horrible way. What we're saying is we're going to take our time, right, to observe. So often, especially if we've been deprived of healthy relationships or any connections in relationships, for much of my life I have been, and my nature is introvert. I'm a projector, if you know about human design. So, all of those things mean that I'm not the extrovert networking out with type person, actually. So my nature isn't extroverted, right? So it can feel like when you meet someone who seems similar to you, right? Seems similar, but you don't know them yet, is we get excited, we get really excited, and we think it's a connection, and we don't wait and observe their behavior over time. Do this in romantic relationships, we do it in friendships. So I want you to observe people more. People have to earn your trust. It's not automatic, but most of us have been trained to give it automatically, right? The second thing I want to teach us, which we must bear in mind, is, again, we do this a lot in romantic relationships. Women do it especially. Men, I think, are more logical generally. Women tend to do this one so much more that I've seen. Anyway, I can't say statistically, but that I've seen than men, is we tend to believe in the potential of someone rather than what they're showing us, right? Now, I think it's awesome because I'm into personal growth. And if you're here, I'm pretty sure you probably are, because you wouldn't be watching my videos if you weren't wanting to learn, evolve, grow. You know what I mean? Be better, a better version of yourself, the truer version of yourself, actually, without the traumas, without the distortions, without what the world has forced you or bullied you into being, right? That's not true to you. But when we believe in the potential person, even if they've got every genuine thing, so, I know that I've got a bit of a rage issue, but I'm working on it. Yeah, I know I get anger issues, but I'm working on it. I'm willing to grow. That all could be true. in any relationship, what I want you to think about is, could I be happy in this dynamic right now? Because although that person may grow and transform, and that's brilliant, yeah? If you can't be happy with them right now the way they are, right, then you're buying into an illusion. And in the narcissistic abuse cycle, we're always sold an illusion. It's the future faking. It's the illusion of who they pretended to be, which is never who they are. And they've got no commitment. If you watch my last video, I talk about change and like how the narcissist has no commitment to change. And change takes a lot of focus and energy. It's not hard work. It's disciplined in terms of I'm choosing something else and I'm shifting my identity into the truer version of me, and I'm willing to make these changes. Now, narcissist does not want to change. So when we fall in love with the potential of person, and a lot of us, you know, especially if you're naturally empathetic and you love people on some level, I know after these cycles you feel like you don't love people sometimes, but actually in our hearts, I think probably if you're here, you do. In some way, you know, you want connection. We all want connection. We believe in people. We believe in their potential. It's a beautiful quality, but so many of us project that potential, and that's who we think we're having a relationship, which that person isn't right now. So if you can't accept the person as they are, right, and it's not healthy for you as they are, then don't get in a relationship on what they could become. Right now, in our lives, right, we're all on an evolution journey, but we all have to choose it. So, you know, people that you can grow with is really exciting. But if you are in the illusion, even if it's not a narcissist, that this person one day could be this, but it's not who they are today. Yeah, and that's what you're falling in love with, then you've got to check yourself and come back to the reality of, but this is how they're presenting themselves. And if they didn't change at all, would this make me happy? Is this the right dynamic for me? Right? The third thing, know how you feel. So many of us, because we've been trained to take the blame for unhealthy people, narcissists, toxic people, we spend a lot of time often in therapy, learning and education of what's wrong with us. We know that we've had certain wounds and traumas and stuff, and we can be a little bit over responsible, right? We learn this. We're trained into taking responsibility. I mean, so many of my clients will write to me about how they feel burdened and hijacked in conversations they can't get out of. And, you know, I'm really good at helping people clear this. But like, you know, we tend to spend too long with people we know aren't good for us because we take responsibility for them. We don't want to just leave them. We don't want to abandon them because we've been abandoned. We don't want to make them feel unhappy or unloved because that's what our traumas are, right? So we don't always feel, we get in icky situations. But fundamentally, you know how you feel. Now, sometimes, yes, when you're with someone, how you feel is actually coming from a wound, right? We know our wounds. We know if we've been abandoned. We know if we've been betrayed. These are all the things that are typical in narcissistic abuse. And you might, like me, have been through it for decades in all different types of demons coming at you through different types of people. So knowing that, right, means I get to be conscious that I check myself, that my behavior, if it's coming from a wound, I'm still keeping it in check and I'm not being unrealistic in my expectation, but you still know how you feel. If you're feeling bad around someone, that you might not be able to participate with that person, you see, and you have to honor how you feel. Being self-focused, one of my pillars in sovereign, means I honor how I feel, right? And even if it is coming from a wound, it's still unhealthy for me right now. Some people you'll meet in relationships, I've got so many clients and people and friends that I've met over the years where, no, you don't have to be a perfect human to be in a loving relationship. You can be the person who can meet you where you are, and you can say, look, I am clingy and I have got anxious attachment style and I am codependent, and for them, they're very secure and it's not going to bother them, and you are dedicated to doing your own work so that you get the reassurance you need, and you generally work on yourself to be a bit stronger, and that person often can be a great match. But when we do it with toxic, unhealthy people for us, it just exasperates our current mood. So if you're very codependent, very clingy, very anxious attachment style, with the wrong person, they're not going to give you the reassurance, and it's going to make you even more of that. So we don't want people that trigger our wounds. We want to be working on our wounds and stop blaming ourselves for having them. There's no perfect people. You are not locked out of love if you're still working through codependency. And anxious attachment style means we're quite clingy, we're quite needy, we need a lot of reassurance. It's all on a spectrum. Avoidant attachment style is when we just shut down. You know, when we have to have a lot of distance because we can't really cope with emotional intensity in relationships, right? Secure is when we're more balanced. So we're all heading towards being secure attachment style, which is when we basically are more balanced about codependency. But if you go through trauma, right? I went through something recently, right? And I was in grief. And, you know, you're more likely to be more anxious at that time because you're going through something. So these things can kind of come, and it's not because I'm not a secure attachment style, because I would actually say, again, I'm very secure attachment style at this point in my life. I used to be a mixture of anxious and avoidant, but now I'm pretty grounded. But when trauma comes, I might behave differently because of the context of what I'm going through. So life's going to do that to everyone, right? But in relationships, we get to agree boundaries and standards and values and get clear on our needs. And they're not always because there's something wrong with you. You as an individual need certain things. I've worked with people where the one partner is like pretty famous and he's really extrovert and his wife was the opposite, and it was the perfect balance. You know, you're not supposed to just change yourself. You're supposed to understand how to balance out where you're coming from, knowing this is my wound, right? But also where you are right now is I need a partner who can be sensitive to that. I need a partner when I say, like, you know, if you don't text me back for 5 hours, it makes my anxious. I'm working on it, but actually I do want a relationship where, you know, even if it's a couple of words, you just let me know that you've got the message, right? And, you know, you can agree boundaries and standards that help you. Again, my Sovereign program, we go through this in depth. Please come into that if you can. The price is going up next month just because I've extended it for 6 weeks coaching support to a whole year coaching support. So trust me, this is just such a beautiful thing to be in. So you're not meant to just be so fixed and so healed, right, before you have a relationship. You're meant to be conscious. I'm working on these things. I know I'm not going to just expect my partner to compensate for my imbalances, right? But at the same time, I'm going to be aware of who I am and how sensitive. I'm a very highly sensitive person, how sensitive I am. And I'm going to be mindful to make sure that my needs are met in relationships. You know, we're not taught after narcissistic abuse to get our needs met. This goes through the whole relationship, emotionally, physically, sexually. You know, this is why we're unfulfilled in relationships, because we don't fully exist there until we learn to get our needs met. And this isn't about being totally healed, so you're never triggered. It's about having a partner that you can communicate with, explain your needs, explain what your weaknesses are, if you want to call them that, and someone who's compatible. You see, relationships, the biggest thing that we don't want to admit in relationships, because we might have some elements of what we want, maybe we're attracted or to that person, or there's some things we like, is compatibility. Compatibility for a life partner, if you don't just want one night stands or whatever they're calling it nowadays, friends with benefits. Like, if you want a real relationship, the first thing is compatibility, and that starts with understanding yourself, communicating your needs, being reasonable in the context. So we've got to figure out what's the balance, what's reasonable for the other person, and being able to meet there. If you can't, you're not compatible, right? It doesn't mean you have to hate the person, doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you or with them. Compatibility is a huge one. The next thing I want to talk to you about, over-investment. Over-investment. We get excited, we meet someone, we over-invest in them, right? So earning trust is one. If you overinvest, it gets icky. I teach a really good module in Sovereign about this. It's actually called something else, but it's the same principles of, like, the problem is we build resentment when we overinvest. So if you do something, but you're not free to give, I've got a whole training on this. It's beautiful. It's going to clear this up for you for life. But, like, when we overinvest, we get icky in our energy because we feel duped. We feel shunned. We feel they owe us something, right? Many of us overinvest and then hold resentments for people. Yeah, I do a brilliant training, as I say, where I teach you about, like, communication. You know, don't create. So many of us will not speak up in relationships. We don't have the tools yet. And again, I teach you that we won't speak what our expectations. So, for example, one of the things I use in Sovereign is, like, if I take my friend out for lunch, right, and I'm freely happy to do it, yeah, then I'm in a position to give. But if I take my friend out to lunch and then she's paying for everyone else's lunch later, but she's not paying mine back, and I'm going to resent that, right, then I wasn't free to give. Now, that friend that doesn't want to be reciprocal might be not right for me on one level, but two, we've got to communicate. You can say to someone, look, I'm going to buy you lunch today, but I'd appreciate if you could buy me back next time. Then you're making a fair communication. She can say, oh, no, don't worry, I don't want to be held to that. But what we tend to do is overinvest, overgive, people please, and then get icky, You know, we've got resentment. We're keeping score. And when you keep score in relationships, guess what? You kill them. Because there's so much underlying ugh. So what we want to do is communicate, only give when we're in a position to give freely with no expectation. And it's absolutely appropriate to have expectations. It's totally appropriate. We have to learn this after narcissistic abuse, but communicated ones. It's like a business contract. It's not a transaction in relationships, but expectations matter. Yeah? If I'm driving to your house every time, or I'm always picking up your kids from school, but I'm getting resentful, I need to communicate that to you and say, look, I really love to help you out and I love seeing you, but I'd really like it if you could come to me sometimes. Yeah, I know that you've got your own life, but so have I. And sometimes, we get in this horrible thing where when we're used to over-investing, then we feel we have to validate ourselves. It's like, well, my friend, she's got 5 kids and I haven't got any kids, so therefore I should drive to her and I should, but it's getting a lot for me. So then we feel we have to justify and I have to make up reasons why I'm busy. You don't. You just have to trust your body and what your emotions are telling you that are messengers. Heal the triggers so you know that you're being reasonable and balanced, but your emotions are, the reason we're so traumatized, guess what, guys? We ignored our emotions for so long. It's just like a huge amount of gunk inside of us. It's like a drain that's clogged that needs flushing out, coming to sovereign because we do it there. But like, that's what it is. If we don't listen to the message of the emotion, it just comes up again. Right? So we process the intensity so that we're not coming in a reactive way, so that we're calm and neutral, so that we can communicate clearly. But every emotion has a powerful message. And if we bung it up and stuff it up, guess what? It just comes back and gets worse over time as trauma. It's not the only way we get traumatized, but it's one of the ways. So overinvestment, having expectations, assumptions that we have not agreed, get out of the ick. Start communicating it. Yeah? I've noticed that you can say something like, I've noticed that this is, you keep being late for our calls. It's probably not intentional, but I'm going to have to tell you that I'm not going to be able to extend the time. I'm going to have you on a call. And also, I'd appreciate if you try and be on time in future. Just communicate it, not just sit on it and fester and then be like, resentful of that person. Communicate well. Sometimes we don't. We get triggered and, we're reactive. But when you process it and understand the message, you'll understand that often those kind of things come from everyone being late for us, or pressure in our lives, or feeling like we don't get value. So we've got to look at the underlying stuff, and but there's a balance, you see, of saying, right, I know it's a theme in my life where I've generally felt like a doormat, but still, right, it's not just my responsibility to be aware of my emotions, although it is my responsibility to heal and set boundaries, right? So nothing's our fault, but everything's our responsibility to change, right? So I still get to now change it right now today, which means that, why do I feel like a doormat? Well, I'm not, what's the core of it? It's this wound, and it's because I'm not prepared to take this action, which is generally speaking up, which is generally saying no, which is generally just getting clear on what I want and need without judgment. Too many of us are like, well, I need someone to reassure me and validate me sometimes, and then we make it wrong. Well, it's probably because I've been abused, and it's probably because I'm traumatized, and it's probably unrealistic, and I just would rather be a little pretty quiet thing in the corner, right? Rather than a human in the experience with someone. Someone can only love you when you show up as who you are, and vulnerable isn't just sharing our weaknesses, it's sharing what we want and need. I teach you this in my program. We can't exist happily until we're true to not just who we are, but what we want and need, right? That is my definition of authentic. So if you want to join Sovereign, the links are in the comments. I've got private coaching spots open at the moment. There's going to be a wait list soon, I think, for that. Otherwise, lots of love, guys. I'll speak to you soon.